Back to our channel. We are in chapter 65. Now today we're going to start our GI, gastrointestinal physiology. So first let us start with the organization of GIT system. So as usual, first actually why we are understanding this glossary terms is to get a better understanding of this concept. So first let us start with our enteric nervous system. So it's a special nervous system, especially it's designed for a GI system, that is gastrointestinal system. It mainly lies in the, even its nervous system, it lies in the gastrointestinal system itself, starting from the esophagus to the anus. So our gastrointestinal system start from our esophagus, or I can say especially from our mouth to the anus. So every part has this enteric nervous system. So our gastric system has its own nervous system, that is called as enteric, hence the name enteric, means related to GI. So enteric nervous system. Next, coming to slow wave. So actually we have different already we have studied in skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle about action potentials. So same like action potentials here, but they're like somewhat different. They have some slow waves, spike potentials. What are this? Let us understand. So what are actually slow waves? Slow waves are, according to the name, they are slow. They are undulating changes in resting membrane potential. So actually here the resting membrane potential changes and are not the true action potentials. They determine the rhythmical GI contractions. So only they determine the rhythmical contractions. They are slow, they are not true action potentials. Even though they are not true action potentials, they only just change the resting membrane potential. We will also study about this in detail along with diagrams at last. So next, what is spike potential? Spike potential is a true action potential which occur automatically whenever the resting membrane potential of GI smooth muscle becomes more positive than minus 40. So if it is more positive than minus 40, moving towards more positive, goes to the threshold and finally activates the action potential. So remember, spike potentials are the true action potentials, whereas the slow waves are not the true action potentials. And next, what is syncytium? So syncytium refers to the multinucleated mass of cytoplasm that is not separated into individual cells. Yeah, of course, if the muscles are contracting as a single unit without any separations, that is called as syncytium. Now let us start our GI system, especially by learning its surfaces. So mainly the GI system have the outer surfaces to the inner surfaces. So let us start with outer to inner. The outermost is the serosa. And next we have the longitudinal smooth muscle, and next we have the circular smooth muscle. After that we have the submucosa, and next last fifth one is the mucosa. So the innermost layer, that is the food which passes the touches, is the mucosa layer. The outer serosa, middle we have longitudinal smooth muscle and circular smooth muscle. Next we have the submucosal layer. At last we have the mucosa layer. And the mucosal muscle, that is in the deeper layers of the mucosa. Even we have some mucosal muscles along with mucosa which also lie in the deeper layers of mucosa. And the motor functions of gut are performed by different layers of smooth muscle. So smooth muscle also play important role to, it has a motor function of gut. So now let us see what are the different types of smooth muscle. Actually the smooth muscles are divided into two types, the multi-unit smooth muscle and the unitary smooth muscle. This unitary smooth muscle is also called as single unit, as the name unitary means single unit smooth muscle, and also we have the multi-unit smooth muscle. So let us see what are this. So the multi-unit smooth muscle, as the name you can see, they're multi means separate smooth muscles, and they're also innervated by single nerve ending because they're separate, so also they have the separate nerves. Whereas coming to unitary is like a syncytium, as we discussed before. So unitary smooth muscle is also called as syncytial smooth muscle, also called as visceral smooth muscle. So three names for the unitary smooth muscles: syncytial smooth muscle or visceral smooth muscle. So they are like about 100 to thousands of smooth muscles which are contracting together as a single unit. So contracting as a single unit is called syncytial smooth muscle or visceral smooth muscle. Multi-unit means they're separate. So because of they're separate, they're innervated by single nerve endings. So next, the GI smooth muscle, the gastrointestinal smooth muscle, mainly function as a syncytium. So we have seen here just the different types of smooth muscle, but in our GI system, in our gastrointestinal system, mainly the smooth muscle which we have is working like a syncytium, means they are working as a single unit. So the individual smooth muscle is also present in the GI, like about 200 to 5 means among the syncytial muscles, the individual smooth muscle is like 200 to 500 millimeter in length. It's not so important, and 2 to 10 millimeter in diameter. Okay, just to understand. Okay, and arranged in bundles as 1,000 parallel fibers. So these muscles are like they're arranging as 1,000 parallel to each other. So they're arranged as bundles in parallel fibers. In longitudinal muscle layer, the bundles, we discuss here the layers, right? So in the longitudinal smooth muscle layer, bundles extend longitudinally along, as the name longitudinal, they are extending longitudinally down intestinal tract. In circular muscle layer, they extend around the gut. So circular, and so their names are according to the definition. In longitudinal smooth muscle, they are arranged longitudinally. In circular means around the smooth muscle means they are circularly arranged. So yeah, within each bundle of muscle fibers, electrically connected by large number of gap junctions. So as you know, these are like single unit syncytium, so they should also have gap junctions to passage of this action potentials. So action potentials travel from one to the another very easily by means of this gap junctions. Same we also discussed in case of our cardiac muscle. And next, the continuous slow intrinsic electrical activity have both slow waves and spikes. So continuous slow intrinsic electrical activity. So it's like having continuously slow activity, which is mainly it is composed of mainly both slow waves and spikes. So till now what we have discussed, we'll see in the diagram so we can understand clearly. So here actually you can see the different layers, as we said, outer to inner. The outermost we have the serosa layer, next following it we have longitudinal muscle layer, after that we have the circular muscle layer, next you can see this is the submucosa, and finally you have the mucosal layer. So here's the mucosa, and it is also having some epithelial lining, and also it contains some mucosal glands. So in this structures only you can see we have the myenteric plexus and Meissner's nerve plexus. So these are the own enteric nervous system of the gut, and here's the submucosal glands, and this is the mesentery. So this is by cross section of the gut we can see this all parts over here, and you can see multi-unit smooth muscle and then unitary smooth muscle here. So the multi-unit smooth muscle, you can see they're like multi-unit, so they have single, now we already discussed ending now. Whereas coming to this unitary, they all work like a syncytium, so they contract like a single unit. So this is an endothelium, these are the medial muscle fibers, and this is an adventitia. So here comes our slow waves and spikes. So you can see the slow waves, as we discussed, they are the modulating in the resting membrane potential itself. They are not true action potentials. Whereas spikes, you can see they're like exactly as the name spike, they're like spikes. So you can see here the resting stimulation by stretch acetylcholine parasympathetic, whereas the stimulation by norepinephrine sympathetic, that is hyperpolarization. We will discuss about this later. First I want to show just the slow waves and spike. Remember, slow waves are not true action potential, whereas spikes are the true action potential. Now we'll talk about detail of slow waves. So as we saw below, they are the modulating industrial membrane potential. So the GI contractions occur rhythmically, and it is determined by the slow wave. So the rhythm of GI is maintained by the slow waves, especially of the smooth muscle membrane potential. So they are not action potentials, their intensity is like just 5, between 5 and 15 millivolts. So their frequency is like in 3 different parts of the stomach. What is their frequency of slow waves? Let us see. The frequency is 3 in the case of the body of stomach. You know the stomach parts, right? So this is the stomach right here. So you can see this part, this is like cardiac part because near to heart, like that, cardiac. And this is the part, it is called fundus, and this is called the body of the stomach, and this is called the antrum of the stomach, and this ending part, this is called the pylorus of the stomach. So these are the parts of the stomach. So the slow wave is frequency is 3 in the body of stomach, it's 12 in the duodenum, and next actually after this the duodenum comes, next jejunum, ileum, next comes our large intestine, right? So 12 in the duodenum, 8 or 9 in the terminal ileum. So these are the frequency values of the slow waves. You should remember them. So these waves are mainly formed by interaction between the smooth muscle and interstitial cells of Kajal. So you may have a question like how these slow waves are formed. They are formed due to interaction between the smooth muscles and interstitial cells of Kajal. Actually, these interstitial cells of Kajal are the electrical pacemaker for the smooth cells. So these cells undergo the cyclic changes in the membrane potential due to unique ion channels. They have some unique ion channels. So because of interaction of interstitial cells of Kajal, smooth muscles, that is leading to formation of slow waves. So only slow waves can't form the contraction except in stomach. So remember, only slow waves. They are not important. They are not true action potential. So they are just like initiating or activating waves. So slow wave can't form contraction except in stomach. They excite intermittent spike potentials which excite contraction. So because of mainly spike potentials only. So the slow waves excite the spike potential. So it's like a pre-action potential. This pre-action potential is activating a true action potential. So because of the activation of true action potential, finally the contraction. So always remember, contraction takes place only because of the true action potential, but not by slow waves in the case of a GIT. So next, coming to spike potential or important action potential. So this is a true action potential occur when the resting membrane potential is mainly minus 40 millivolts, and the higher slow wave potential, it have higher slow wave potential, greater frequency means it is higher than the slow wave potential, and the greater frequency of spike potential is between 1 and 10 spikes per second. So it may last like about 10 to 40 times as long as action potential in large nerves, like 10 to 20 millimeters second for each spike. So they have larger time duration. So in GI system, the calcium ions entry is responsible for action potential, so called sodium calcium channels. They're useful for both in opening and closing. Remember, in GI system, especially the action potentials are formed by the entry of not only calcium, of course calcium play important role, even sodium plays a role. So these are called as sodium calcium channels. Because of sodium and calcium influx only, the action potentials are formed, but they're slow in opening and closing, but they are the main cause of action potential or spike potential. So the normal resting potential of GI is very important to remember, that is minus 56 millivolts, and later after this it goes to threshold because of influx of either sodium or calcium. So it undergoes depolarization. After depolarization, the muscle fibers become more excitable. Later it may go to hyperpolarization. Hyperpolarization means inside the cell is getting more negative, means more negative than resting membrane potential, and tissue fibers are less excitable. Of course, if they go to hyperpolarization, fibers are less excitable. So what are the depolarizing factors in our GI system? Stretch of muscle, acetylcholine release from our peripheral nervous system, stimulation of GI specific hormones. So these are all the depolarizing factors. That is stretch. If the muscle is stretched, then it may undergo depolarize because of release of acetylcholine by parasympathetic, may also undergo depolarization and stimulation of GI specific hormones. And hyperpolarizing factors means the cell is going more negative. Why? Because of the effect of like norepinephrine, epinephrine, and stimulation of sympathetic nervous system, which mainly secrete norepinephrine. So mainly norepinephrine and epinephrine playing the role to go into hyperpolarization state, whereas depolarization state is due to stretch of muscle, acetylcholine release from parasympathetic nervous system, stimulation of GI specific hormones. Now let us see the entry of calcium, how it causes the smooth muscle contraction in our GI. So mainly the calcium act by calcium calmodulin system here, which control the mechanism. It activates the myosin and actin, causing contraction. These are the main filaments which are required for contraction. So these are activated by calcium entry, because that too by process known as calcium calmodulin process. So in slow waves only the sodium enters, so they can't contract muscle, but in spike potential calcium enter and cause contraction. So that's why we say the contraction happens in our GI muscles mainly because of sodium and calcium entry. So sodium is like not least important, like because it is only activating our slow fibers or slow waves, but calcium plays an important role for the contraction because its entry is in the spike potentials, the true action potentials. Now let us see the neural control. So till now we have understood how spike, sodium, calcium, all these affect slow wave spike potential. Now let us see the neural control. So mainly the enteric nervous system. So in enteric nervous system we have total 100 million neurons, which is equal to the entire spinal cord nearly. So you can see a very much large amount of neurons are present only in our enteric system, that is our GI system. So this nervous system mainly control movements and also secretion of GI system. So actually it has two types of plexus, that is outer plexus and inner plexus. I'll show you in diagram. So here you can see this is called as outer plexus, that is myenteric plexus, whereas the inner plexus is called as submucosal plexus. So let us see the theory and understand side by side. So the outer plexus is between the longitudinal and circular muscle layers, because this side we have the longitudinal muscle layer, here we have circular. So between them we have the outer plexus, that is myenteric plexus, and myenteric plexus is also called as Auerbach plexus. So this myenteric or Auerbach plexus mainly control the movements. So you can see this mainly controls the movements. Next, coming to inner plexus, the inner plexus is called submucosal plexus because it's in the submucosa, or also called as Meissner's plexus, which is present in a submucosa mainly. They both have, this is both we'll see later. So this submucosal plexus mainly control the GI secretion and local blood flow. So remember, the submucosal plexus is useful for the secretion and local blood flow control, whereas myenteric plexus is mainly involved with the movement. You can see here actually this both submucosal plexus and myenteric plexus both have parasympathetic and sympathetic supply, you can see. But remember, parasympathetic is mostly preganglionic, whereas sympathetic is mainly postganglionic. Always parasympathetic nervous system, in the case of GIT, it mainly stimulates the GI system, whereas sympathetic nervous system inhibits the GI system. So now we're going to see the sensory nerve endings which originate in our GI epithelium. Sensory nerve endings originate in GI epithelium and send efferent fibers to both plexus of enteric system plus prevertebral ganglia of sympathetic nervous system and spinal cord and vagus nerve all way to brainstem. So here you can see in the epithelium cells we are getting the efferents of sensory neurons. So this efferents fibers is given to both plexus, that is submucosal plexus and myenteric plexus, and also it is given to our prevertebral ganglia of sympathetic nervous system, and it is also given to our spinal cord, vagus nerve, all the way to brainstem. So all the signals go to the brainstem. You can see prevertebral ganglia, spinal cord, and brainstem. So autonomic control of, now we'll see how autonomically GI is controlled. Maybe the PNS, parasympathetic nervous system, increase the activity of nervous system, and it have the cranial division and sacral division. So first we'll see the cranial division. Cranial division is entirely in the vagus. It is mainly used for the innervation of esophagus, stomach, pancreas, and actually it decreases uh, activity of intestine, whereas the sacral division, it mainly originate in 2, 3, 4 sacral segments which pass by the pelvic nerves to the distal half of large intestine and up to all to the like anus. So especially the sigmoid, rectal, anal increase the supply by parasympathetic nervous system. So the sigmoid, rectal, anal are especially to defecation reflexes. So these are used for defecation reflexes. So defecation reflexes are also coming from the sacral division of parasympathetic nervous system. Next we have the postganglionic neurons of GI parasympathetic nervous system. They are located mainly in myenteric and submucosal plexus. Stimulation of PNS increase the activity of entire enteric nervous system, increase the GI functions of course. So SNS decrease the activity or inhibit the GI. Sympathetic fibers originate in spinal cord between T5 and L2 segments, and most of the preganglionic fibers innervate gut after leaving spinal cord, enters the sympathetic chains that lie lateral to spinal cord and may pass on by chains to outlying ganglia like celiac ganglia and also various mesenteric ganglia. So most of the postganglionic sympathetic neuron bodies are in this ganglia, and postganglionic fibers spread by postganglionic sympathetic nerves to all parts of the gut. So this is how all parts of the gut is getting fibers. So mainly the norepinephrine inhibit the intestinal tract, smooth muscle, except the mucosal muscle, which gets excited. So only for the mucosal muscle it's reverse. And next, the inhibitory effect of norepinephrine on neurons of entire nerve enteric system. So, strong stimulation of SNS inhibit the motor movement of gut. So, it literally blocks the movement of food by GI tract. So, strong stimulation SNS blocks. So, next coming to efferent sensory nerve fibers from gut. So, some have cell bodies in enteric system and others are present in dorsal root ganglia. So, these sensory nerves stimulated by irritation of gut mucosa or excessive distension of gut or presence of specific chemical substance in gut. So, signals by them mainly cause excitation or either inhibition of intestinal movement or even may cause secretion. So, these fibers go all the way to spinal cord and also to the brainstem. So, 80% of nerve fibers in vagus are efferent rather than efferent. Remember, 80% are efferent in vagus. So, they bring the information from the GI system to the medulla and in turn initiate the vagal reflex signals that return to GI tract to control its function. So it's a vagal reflex because vagus only it's bringing it the information and again vagus is only going back. So the GI blood flow is mainly the splanchnic circulation, which include the blood flow to the gut and also to the spleen, pancreas, liver. We've already done a detailed video in splanchnic circulation, you can check out. So finally we'll discuss important points from textbook. So we can check out this diagram here. Mouth actually have saliva, lingual lipase, salivary alpha amylase are proteins. About saliva we'll see next chapter. And in esophagus you can see mainly electrolytes, mucus. In stomach you can see HCl, intrinsic factor, peptinogens, gastric lipase, mucus, gastrin, somatostatin, histamine. About each of this we're going to discuss in gastric secretions. And next coming to small intestine, it mainly acts as buffer. It has mucus electrolytes, enterokinase, brush border disaccharides, brush border peptidases, secretin, gastrin, cholecystokinin, vaso-inhibitory peptide, gastric inhibitory peptide, motilin, serotonin, somatostatin. So all of them we're going to discuss in detail in our next preceding chapters. So liver and gallbladder, their bile and buffer electrolytes. It is coming to pancreas. Exocrine glands buffer an enzyme trypsin, chymotrypsin, procarboxypeptidase, lipase, colipase, preelastase, alpha amylase, monitor peptide, trypsin inhibitor, stimulates CCK. Endocrine glands like insulin, glucagon, somatostatin. So we'll see everything. So here we have seen the spike potential. So these are mainly stimulated by either stretch, acetylcholine or parasympathetic. Whereas the hyperpolarization is stimulated by norepinephrine and sympathetics. Here going to see mainly the difference comparison of smooth skeletal cardiac muscle. So you can check out this one so that you'll get integration of all these muscles. What is the difference? This one we already discussed. So here we have the major difference between the myenteric and submucosal plexus. So this already discussed in our discussion. So you can see the different type of neurotransmitters secreted by enteric neurons: acetylcholine, norepinephrine, ATP, serotonin, dopamine, cholecystokinin, substance vasoactive intestine, substance P, vasoactive intestinal polypeptide, somatostatin, leuenkephalin, metenkephalin, bombacin. So the specific function of many of these are not well known enough to justify discussion. So other than to point following, acetylcholine most often excites GI activity. Norepinephrine, epinephrine almost always inhibit GI. So you can remember these points. And once we see this difference, so the myenteric plexus, it is concerned mainly with controlling muscle activity along the length of the gut with specific effects. So it may increase the tone of gut wall, increase intensity of rhythmic contraction, slightly increase rate of rhythm of contraction, increase velocity of conduction or excitatory wave along gut wall, causing more rapid movement of gut and peristaltic waves. So it is mainly composed of excitatory plus inhibitory neurons. Inhibitory neurons useful for inhibiting some of intestinal sphincter muscle like pyloric sphincter, the sphincter of ileocecal valve. Coming to submucosal plexus, it's mainly concerned with controlling the function within the inner wall of each minute local intestine secretion, local absorption, local contraction of submucosal muscle, and it's composed mainly of excitatory neurons. So here only excitatory, here we have both excitatory and inhibitory. We'll also see this difference. So first shape, you can see it's fusiform, it's cylindrical, it's branch. And next coming to attached to bone, no, neither is attached to bone. Yeah, skeletal muscle is attached to bone. And mitochondria are less in smooth muscle, few in skeletal muscle, many in cardiac muscle. And syncytium is seen in single unit smooth muscle. Here no syncytium, here contracts as a syncytium. And it's poorly developed. What is poorly developed? Sarcotubular system is poorly developed. Here well developed, here moderately developed. Next coming to contraction speed, it's very slow, fast, slow, possible through gap junctions, absent, possible through intercalated disc and gap junctions. So this is important. Resting membrane potentials of smooth muscle is -50, skeletal muscle is -80, cardiac muscle is -90. Whereas coming to refractory period is long for smooth muscle, skeletal muscle short, cardiac muscle. So you can see smooth muscle, cardiac muscle have most of the similarities. Skeletal muscle is looking somewhat odd. So we can revise it. We need to learn this to understand the different concepts, to integrate the different concepts together. So this is the introduction part of GI system.